So the first of our kind of models, ladders of engagement. They're systems designed to develop supporters into organizers via moving them through a series of steps or roles. This is a basic model for identifying support levels and developing activists into organizers. Lots of ways, numerous ways this model is set up, but the basics is that people will fall into different levels of support engagement. Identifying where supporters are and having a strategy to move people from one level to the next is a relatively simple and straightforward model. It can be used with in-person organizing as well as digital social media organizing. Um, phone banking, email, that kind of stuff. But digital engagement should always be funneling towards real world actions. And then most databases, CRMs, contact management systems, have a version of this built in, right? So a lot of Greens use Nation Builder. You might have heard of Paths. That's what this is. In Action Network, which is what we use in Illinois, it's literally called ladders. Um, and so this is a super basic kind of way of more mobilizing, right, based on McAlevy's, because it's all internal facing. Once you get someone, right, and so the graphic on the side says view, you move them from view to share to volunteer to donate to recurring donate to advocate, right? And the strategies for doing it, and those don't have to be that is obviously a social media start kind of model, but it shows the steps, right? And that's what in Illinois for a while, we used a ladder system, um, where we took someone from being a county level organizer to a regional level organizer to a state level organizer. And there were processes and trainings and all kinds of diversions that happened in there, right? Like when you went to state level, it wasn't just a universal thing. Like, were you a volunteer coordinator? Were you a tech person doing website stuff, right? So what it meant was kind of unique for everybody in that system, but it gave our staff organizer at the time a way to evaluate everyone, right? I mentioned earlier, some people are just going to donate and that's all they're going to do. And so, for us, I guess it started as like supporter, which is like you signed up for our email list, and then probably donor, member, and then we start getting into organizer, right?
Mhm.
Because the donors are just donating, and in Illinois we have a dues-based system, so there are plenty. Most of our members aren't actively engaged in the state party, and many are not actively engaged in a local party, right? They just support the party. They vote for us and they don't really turn out. And so ladders of engagement is developing, the idea is develop a strategy to move people from different levels, right? So if you've got a supporter, you make sure they're getting emails, you make sure they're getting contacted and invited to events by that your local party or local candidates are doing. You try to give them enough quality engagement and enough quality content and opportunities to be involved that all of a sudden they oh, now they've donated, cool, oh, now they've shown up to an event. What's our next step? How do we get them to come to the next one? I think that's a good segue into the just mentioning a lot of green parties. The only opportunity to engage is a business meeting, and you're going to lose so many people if that's your only opportunity for engagement. Um, Not all people are ever going to sit through a business meeting, right? There's a subsect of supporters who are just never going to come and sit there. That they don't want to do that. Um, but so you need to make sure you have a lot of opportunities to do it. Kind of pairing with the ladders of engagement, like I said, that it's meant to be like if you're not doing any organizing, start at least with ladders on the people in your contact list, right, and start working
Mhm.
through. The ladders is like a simple start off point to jump, um,
Yeah.
and so there's that part of it, that we can use it. But another, a simple model that I would point to is pre-COVID. A lot of green parties were pretty devastated by COVID in terms of their activity. But there was a local in Southern Illinois, and they had three things every month. They had their business meeting, they had a socializing, they call it green drinks, and it was at a local bar where it was just a social social opportunity for members of the party to socialize and build relationships, but also for new people to come in a less formal setting and have green conversations with members of the party. And then they always had an education event that was almost always partnered with other organizations, right? So they're building those relationships throughout the community by working with other people. It helps them cast a wider net, right? If you work with a Medicare for All group, and the Greens are on the panel, and the Green on the panel is aggressive in calling for Medicare for All and aggressive in pointing out that the Democrats haven't done it, you might get some converts from their lists, right? Who wouldn't have necessarily came to your thing. But that, if you're doing nothing with your current stuff, like start an email list, start sending emails, start identifying basic ladders and moving people through. And for your basic meetings, if you can do even just a social event and a meeting, if you can't pull off, a rally once a month or an educational event once a month, but giving people multiple opportunities to actually enter the organization. Frankly, the way that most people are introduced is a turnoff, and they never come back.
Yeah, I agree with that. We've had that experience in my local Green Party. You definitely need multiple ways to get involved because there's different people that have different interests, different goals, different amount of free time that they have. So some people have limited time and they might want to spend that limited time doing a particular activity. So you want to make sure that there's plenty of opportunity for people to get involved. We invite people to our local business meetings, and you're right, it can be a snooze fest sometimes. And so for one hand, I think that also that could also indicate that you might need to change up the format of your meeting and not make it so boring and bland at all. One thing that we experimented with, and again, this was all kind of pre-COVID, so we're kind of like figuring out how to get all this stuff back together. And so some of it has been done online to varying success. Some of it will potentially come back in person. We'll see how things go. But we did things like at our business meeting, set aside a good chunk of time for an educational presentation, to have somebody come in from the community and talk about a local issue that's really important, or maybe watch a short documentary on YouTube or something together and talk about it. And that way people are learning about it and enjoying the discussion with each other. It's not just formal I motion to second the motion of the sometimes you need those business processes in order to maintain fairness in a democratic system. But we do have to recognize that people don't join organizations to do Robert's rules. They join organizations because they want action and they want to see the fruits of their labor. They want to see something come out of that action. So while the meetings are important, we have to have more than that. So make educational events, make reading groups, also have social events, because you need some fun, you need to not burn out, but also those social activities are where we build trust and camaraderie with each other, where we learn more about each other. And again, once we have that trust, we were talking about media a moment ago, if someone tries to come in and disrupt the group and say that there's some kind of problem, or make accusations or something, each other, and so you can discuss it together, and you can find some way to handle the issue or to get through it, and that's very important too, actually. I will also say, last thing on this ladders thing is, while this particular graphic is for social media, I want to point out that it integrates in with what we were talking about earlier with organizing from the grassroots. You start at these lower levels where somebody's just kind of a follower, supporter, just is curious, but they're not quite ready to get engaged yet. They just kind of want to see what's going on, and that's okay. Include them on mailing lists, but maybe don't invite them to the business meeting or whatever, right? That might be too much for them at first. But once someone does get involved, then you can start inviting them to things like that. Hey, we have an action coming up. We have a reading group coming up. We have a business meeting. You can come to that. And as they come to those things and they get more active, you'll see, like we said earlier, leaders will naturally start to come up from this process. Like leadership is kind of a top rung of this ladder. As people move up, you'll kind of naturally see who the people are who are leaders, because they'll spring in action and start organizing their own events and their own reading groups and things like that. And those are the people that you really want to identify and make sure that you're providing them support and training and all, so that they do those things, that they don't just walk away from the organization. Because those kind of people that are so active and committed, if they're not seeing progress, if they're just seeing business meetings and nothing happens, then they're just going to disappear. They're going to ghost you, right? They're going to walk away. They're going to go try to find something else to put their effort into. So it's important to keep people engaged in different ways, and a good way to do it, I think, is this ladders way, to kind of gauge who needs, what level of engagement each person wants to be in, so that you're not overwhelming people and you're not also letting them become bored or whatever. And CRM is software, like getting a website and all, is it's obviously designed for this kind of thing. But if you're just starting an organization and you don't have money for website or whatever, my local party, we were literally just doing this in like a spreadsheet. We just had like an Excel spreadsheet. And if you just have a couple dozen members, you can put name, email address, and then have like ladder and then rank them all, right? Say these are ladder 1 people, these are ladder 2 people, these are ladder 3. And that was what we did for a while. That the ladder 4 people were all the ones we invited to the business meeting. And so they would come and we'd make decisions, and we decide to have a rally on Saturday, let's say, right? Then you let the ladder 3 people know, hey, we're going to have a rally. Do you want to come make signs with us or whatever? And then once that happens, you can send out an email to all of your ladder 1 people who are just kind of followers, and just say, hey, we had this event. We had a lot of fun. Here's some photos and all. If you want to be involved in the next one, do this thing, sign this petition, sign whatever. And you move them up the ladder so that they know how to get involved, but you're not overwhelming them if they're not ready for that yet, right? So, that's all. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, and Cody wanted to know the difference between an activist and an organizer, and how do we and how do we transform them? Garrett mentioned it. I think it's important to understand that some people are never going to rise above a certain step. That's where their level of engagement is, and you could very well push them away by over pushing. They do more, right? So a lot of it is kind of just is interpersonal interaction, right, and understanding. But the big separation for me, activist to organizer, is the activists are people who come to the rally, and the organizers are the people who put it together. So that's the difference.
In terms of the previous slide, I think the activists are somewhere between the advocates and the mobilizers, which are important. They're an important part of the strategy, but they're not the only strategy. You have to have the organizers that are actually building the grassroots movement too, and not just telling people to go to rallies.
Yeah, so I think to get to kind of make that movement, a big part of it is support, right? One of the big problems that I've experienced in organizing on the left is there's a lot of people who want other people to organize things for them. Right? They have ideas that they want other people to carry out, and they often tend to take up a whole lot of room and a whole lot of space in an organization. So when someone comes with an idea, cool, how can we support you, right? And see who starts to take initiative on things, because like Garrett said, natural organizers kind of just most of the time in small organizations, they very much make themselves known in an earth-shattering way, right? Because in a lot of small organizations, there's not a lot of actual organizing going on. And so all of a sudden someone comes in and things start happening. And, it's actually what I tell Greens who think their local is stagnant. Just go start organizing something. They can get on or they cannot, but, they can get on board or they cannot, but just start getting the train moving. And that's what organizers will often do. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't develop people, right? See who's coming to every single protest, right? When you're having events and rallies over time, you should be keeping track of attendance when you can, best you can. Who is each thing? If you've got the spreadsheet, mark it in the spreadsheet. If you've got a CRM, mark it in the event. And when you notice, hey, that person's at everything we do, start having deeper conversations with that person, right? Or do they want to be in, hey, do you want to come to the next organizer meeting where we actually decide what the next one of these we're going to do is? Right? That they may not be, they may be more shy or not as aggressive to just actually come in and start doing it, right? Or to come up and say, how do I get more involved? But if you see the same person consistently coming, go out and engage, right? And then I highly recommend people. I highly recommend people, try to almost like a mentorship program, right? When I was involved in Occupy, every role that we had that was democratically elected in the organization had basically people who could volunteer to just learn under that person, right? So if you were interested in learning how our media worked, you could work directly. We encouraged you to work directly with our present media, chair to figure out how it worked. And then we had regular elections like Garrett had mentioned, where almost always it cycled, right? And the goal was that people with knowledge and skill could pass it off to someone else, and they could take some things off their plate, and then that person could refocus or could keep developing. In green organizations, people are often doing way more work than they need to do, than they should be doing. They need to do it, so they're doing it, but the more work than they should be doing, and it means that they're not doing their best work in what they where they should be focused. They're doing 6 things over here, and it's keeping them from doing it. So engage those people who show up regularly. The natural organizer is going to make themselves known, and then when you meet these new people and start bringing them into the organizing group, that the more action-oriented part of your organization, make sure that there's support for their ideas, that you're setting them up for success and supporting them, and that you're giving them tools and developing them as as organizers.